Alright, so my essay for SCLA 101 was called First, Second, and Third Waves of Feminism and the Relation to Mary Astle's Ideas. I got this idea because I really connected to some reflections upon marriage. I'm like, I could probably make an essay about that. And I did. So pretty much, Mary Astle was a female philosopher back in the 17th century, and this is a time where gender played a massive role in pretty much everything in society. And her philosophy is like focused, or at least in some reflections upon marriage, were about like the differences between men and females and their roles in society at the time. In the research paper that I wrote, my goal is to see like, there's first, second, and third wave feminism. Those came after Mary Astle, and I was wondering how related are her ideas compared to, or like what she'd believe in, to those waves and the feminists and their beliefs. And so that's basically the root of my entire thing, is figuring out that relationship. Now, and I pretty much, and the, like, that's pretty much an introduction, and then the first, like, actual body paragraph is to get an understanding of who Mary Astle was, and it just gives you a simple gist. She pretty much in some reflections upon marriage, she was really critical of marriages at the time, given that the name was Reflections Upon Marriage. And yeah, and men were typically not, like, they weren't on the same level, or women weren't on the same level as men, and that was the problem. And it was often because at that time women were shown as lessers to men, and yeah. And then, and she argued that if women had the exact same, what's it called, education opportunities as women, or men as men, sorry about that, there wouldn't be this gap between men and females, because there's only an artificial gap because of the way that men and women are treated differently. And after that, it begins like my first analysis into the waves of feminism. And for the first wave, I start by like when it started, like what were the problems, or like what were the goals of first wave feminism. And I basically said it was for women's suffrage and the right to vote. And most of these were like marriage, like rights, like divorce, because you can't really divorce, which is also a problem in Mary Astle's thing, because women can't divorce. It's only the men that can do it, really. And I was pretty confident that they were going to be really related, just because there's not that big of a gap in time. It's pretty much, I connected how women were viewed as intellectually inferior, and she thinks that giving men, or first wave feminists, like, give women the same educational rights, and it'll, there won't be a difference between the two. And though it's not like directly stated about the right to vote in Mary Astle, I was able to make a connection between what she would think, and I aligned it with first wave feminism. And that was the first one. And then on to the second wave. This took place during the 1960s. A little parched. But this is the time around, like, when this is the second wave of feminism that was a lot bigger, because now it wasn't just a small niche group of like white women. Now it's like everybody, like blacks included. And this was 1960s, 1970s. You know, this was a big time for change because this is right after the Vietnam War, or like during the Vietnam War. And this time around, it was for financial independence and workplace rights. And like, what do I mean by that? Well, they were stereotyped in jobs like teachers and like nurses. You couldn't really, women couldn't really be engineers or anything like that. And while they were in those jobs, like while they were in the jobs that they were in, they were paid less, a lot less than their male counterparts. And I believe that, like this, like everything that Mary Astle like said in some reflections on marriage, like perfectly aligns, like even more so than the first one, because it's not about what's it called? It's not about, you know, the right to vote, but just about being treated the same as men, not lessers. And I did some research into it. And if a woman wanted a credit card, they'd have to co-sign. This is like right around when credit cards became a thing. They'd have to co-sign with a man. And pretty much, Mary Astle said, I guess I can't. So little reason we have to envy men's wealth and greatness. So like, she pretty much said we shouldn't have to degrade ourselves into having to go after a man's wealth or having to envy a man's wealth because they can have their own wealth. And that line, I think, aligns with second wave feminism. And yeah. And also, you know how earlier she said that if women were given the same education as men, then they'd pretty much be equal. Well, in this second wave of feminism, the people in second wave feminism, the feminists, they're like, hey, during World War II when all the men were off at war, we filled in all of those jobs that the men used to do before they had to go off to war. And I think this is like, this connects with Mary Astle because she's saying, hey, if we gave them the same education, we'd be equals. And I think this is the experiment, not a real experiment, but this is the show that this is true, because for her it was just a hypothesis because she couldn't prove anything, because she didn't have like a test subject or anything. And then the third wave was pretty different from the rest because they all build up on top of each other. They don't revert. And so now they're having to find different like ways. And this time around, it was third wave feminism was for social justice, support of minorities, and it wasn't just for women at like this time around. It was for like the LGBTQ plus community. And that's what I found. And like, even from the get-go, I was like, this is probably going to be less connected with Mary Astle's views because of that gender, or not really, LGBTQ and women aren't the same. And she only, from what I found out, I think she'd only care about women, not like all the other groups. No offense to the other groups. And that's where I was like, this might not really be related. But the social justices part, I believe, like, this was like for like workplace harassment, or not like workplace, but like people coming out about like, yeah, I've been abused by this man, or insert man. And she how I was able to connect Mary Astor to this is that she said in some reflections upon marriage, how come it may you say there are so happy marriage or few happy marriages? Well, usually in unhappy marriages, there's a lot of fighting, and also at that the time where Mary Astor was alive, you could beat your wife if you wanted to, pretty much, and they had nothing to do, and that wouldn't be a happy marriage. And it was really taboo at the time to talk about, getting beat, and that's why I wasn't really brought up. So I believe that's the part that would align with Mary Astor. So it's not as aligned as the last two, but it's getting there. I didn't go over fourth wave feminism because that would have gone over the word count, but I just like to add it's a little bit different. It's kind of an extension of third wave. It's like the Me Too movement and all that. I don't really call that feminism. That's a different topic. But after all of the researching I did, I was able to conclude that all the waves of feminism are really closely related to Mary Astor's views, just based off of some reflections upon marriage. But where it does fall short is the third wave, which is including everybody. And yeah, that's pretty much what my essay was about. Thanks for listening.